Not everything needs to be said. Most things shouldn't. That's not weakness. That's discipline. That's control. That's awareness of your power and when not to use it. In a world addicted to noise, people tweeting, posting, reacting, venting, there's something rare and valuable about restraint. Most people want to talk just to fill silence, just to be seen, just to prove they know something. But that's not strength. That's insecurity wearing a loud mask. You don't need to respond to every insult. You don't need to speak up just to be heard. You don't have to correct every person who's wrong. Sometimes silence is smarter, more powerful. It protects your energy, it protects your strategy, because when you speak too much, you reveal your mindset. You show your intentions, you give away your advantage, and in war, whether it's on the battlefield, in business, or in life, showing your hand is how you lose. People assume silence means weakness. No. Silence is what you earn when you're confident enough not to perform for others. It's what you hold on to when you don't need validation. You've trained, you've prepared, you know the plan, and you know what. You don't need to tell anyone. You observe, you gather, you calculate. You let others run their mouths while you run your mission. You let them think they're ahead. You let them think you're passive. All the while, you're moving quietly, strategically, relentlessly. There's a time to speak, a time to make noise, a time to give the command, to deliver the blow. But until then, say nothing, because the person who talks the most usually knows the least. And the one who listens, he learns, he adapts, he evolves. Words are easy, action is not. And real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg for attention. It moves with quiet confidence. It strikes with precision, so before you open your mouth, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this valuable? Is this driven by purpose or by ego? If it's ego, let it die. If it's fear, hold the line. If it's anger, channel it, turn it into action. Don't let your mouth become your weakness. Let your silence become your strength. Discipline starts with what you don't say. Self-control starts with what you don't react to. And leadership, true leadership, is not about volume, it's about timing, precision, impact. Discipline is knowing something and still staying silent. That's one of the hardest things a person can do. Hold back when every part of you wants to speak, correct, show off, or retaliate. But real power, real inner strength, comes from restraint. It comes from control. It comes from knowing you could speak, knowing you have the information, the answer, the truth, but choosing not to throw it around carelessly. Because you understand this, not everything needs to be said. You see, knowledge without discipline is dangerous. It turns into arrogance. It becomes noise. People who learn something new often feel the need to display it, flaunt it, prove themselves. That's ego, that's insecurity. But when you have discipline, when you've been through enough battles, you understand that silence can be more powerful than any spoken word. Discipline means you've trained your mind to hold back the impulse to speak for attention. It means you're not a slave to your emotions. When someone disrespects you, you don't always respond. When someone is wrong, you don't always correct them. When you know the answer, you don't always raise your hand. Why? Because you've developed patience. You've developed awareness. You've learned to ask yourself, what does speaking right now actually accomplish? Often, it accomplishes nothing. Or worse, it reveals your hand. It shows others how you think, what you know, what matters to you. And in the wrong hands, that information can be used against you. Discipline means you guard that. You protect your knowledge like a weapon, not to show off, but to deploy only when necessary. This applies in life, in leadership, in war, in business. The disciplined individual isn't triggered by every insult. They don't react to provocation. They don't rush to speak. They observe, they listen. They wait, they let others expose themselves while they remain quiet, composed, unreadable, and when the time comes to act, to speak, to lead, they do it with precision, with purpose. The disciplined person knows the difference between reacting and responding, between ego and strategy, between weakness and power, and often that power lies in saying nothing at all. That takes strength, that takes practice, that takes humility. It's not passive, it's active self-control. It's calculated, it's cold, and it's effective. Knowing something and choosing silence, that's mastery, that's discipline, that's leadership, because anyone can talk, but only the disciplined know when not to. Loose lips destroy empires. It's not just a catchy phrase from wartime propaganda. It's a timeless truth that echoes across centuries of failure, betrayal, and collapse. The moment you let your guard down, the moment you speak without discipline, you put everything at risk: your mission, your people, your strategy, your legacy. Because once something leaves your mouth, it's out of your control. And in the wrong hands, a single sentence can burn down everything you've built. Empires, whether nations, businesses, families, or reputations, aren't destroyed by enemies charging the gates. They're destroyed from within. They're compromised by weakness, by leaks, by careless talk from those who should have known better. One misplaced comment, one ego-fueled conversation, one whispered secret can unravel years of work. That's why discipline isn't just about action, it's about silence, strategic silence. When someone can't control their tongue, they can't be trusted with power. They can't be trusted with information. Because power isn't loud, it's calculated. It knows when to speak and when to wait. Loose lips are the opposite of that. They belong to people who need attention, who need to feel important, who need validation. They don't realize the weight of their words until it's too late. A leader must understand the battlefield, not just the one with guns and soldiers, but the one with information and influence. In this kind of war, words are weapons. And the untrained fire them recklessly. They gossip, they reveal plans, they share their fears, they overshare what should have been kept sacred, and in doing so, they create cracks in the foundation of their empire. Cracks that enemies will exploit. Loose lips don't just destroy others, they destroy the speaker. When you can't keep a secret, when you can't hold the line, people stop trusting you. They stop bringing you into the room. You lose access, you lose respect, and eventually you lose your position, because real strength, real leadership is built on trust, and trust begins with silence. When you operate in silence, you become dangerous. You move undetected, you observe more, you reveal less, you don't waste energy, you don't leak strategy, you don't expose your mindset, you let others talk while you plan, you let others guess while you execute. So remember this: every empire, every mission, every goal is one careless conversation away from collapse. And you have a choice every day to guard your words like your life depends on it, or to let them slip and invite destruction. Loose lips don't just sink ships, they sink legacies. The wise move in shadows, not in noise. They don't seek the spotlight. They don't announce every step. They don't crave validation, because true wisdom understands that power doesn't need to be seen. It needs to be felt. It needs to be earned, and most of all, it needs to be protected. People chase attention like it's currency. They want the world to know their plans, their goals, their hustle. They want likes, comments, recognition. But the wise, they don't need that. They operate differently, quietly, patiently, with discipline. They know that noise is a distraction, and distraction is the enemy of progress. When you move in noise, you're exposed. You're vulnerable, you invite interference, you create pressure you don't need. But when you move in shadows, you remain unpredictable, you become untouchable, you gather strength in silence, you build in private. You strike with precision, and no one sees it coming, because no one knew it was coming. This isn't about fear, it's about focus. The wise choose shadows not because they're hiding, but because they're preparing. Training, thinking, waiting. They know timing is everything, and they don't waste time trying to prove their worth to the world. They don't speak just to be heard. They don't move just to be noticed. They let their results do the talking. The shadows teach discipline. You learn to be okay with being misunderstood. You learn to stay focused when no one is clapping. You learn to endure without applause. And that endurance, quiet, consistent, unshakable, is what separates the wise from the loud, because noise fades, but real power endures. The wise understand something most people don't, that every move doesn't need to be broadcasted. Every victory doesn't need to be celebrated publicly. Every setback doesn't need to be shared. There's value in keeping things close. There's strength in being underestimated, and there's freedom in operating where others aren't looking. In the shadows, you're free from judgment, free from distraction, free to sharpen your mind, your body, your spirit. That's where growth happens. That's where clarity is born. That's where warriors are made. Not in the spotlight, not in the noise, but in the unseen, unheard grind that no one respects until it's too late. When the time comes, the wise emerge. not with words, but with action, not with noise, but with impact. They strike with the force of everything they've built in silence, and when they move, the world pays attention, not because they asked for it, but because they earned it. So move in shadows, build in silence. Let others make noise, let others chase attention, you chase excellence. Silence is strategy, silence is strength. In a world addicted to noise, where everyone wants to be seen, heard, and validated, silence has become a lost art. But the ones who understand its power, the disciplined, the focused, the dangerous, they use silence like a weapon, not out of fear, not out of weakness, but out of pure, calculated control. Silence creates space. Space to observe, space to think, space to breathe before you strike. While others are rushing to speak, to react, to make their presence known, the silent individual is watching, analyzing, preparing. That's strategy, because when you're silent, you're not distracted by the need to prove anything. You're locked in, you're gathering information, you're studying patterns, behavior, intentions, and the more you know, the less you need to say. Strength isn't loud. It's not found in shouting, in arguing, in broadcasting every thought. Strength is stillness. Strength is choosing not to react. It's holding the line when your emotions want to take over. It's walking away from the noise and staying focused on your path. That takes more power than most people can understand, because it means choosing long-term gain over short-term satisfaction. It means not giving in to ego. It means knowing what to say, and when to say nothing at all. People will try to bait you, they'll try to provoke you, they'll push for a reaction, for an emotional outburst, for anything that breaks your calm. That's the test, because the second you open your mouth at the wrong time, you lose control, you give away your position, you show your cards. But when you stay silent, you stay in command, you don't give them anything to work with. And that frustrates them, confuses them, weakens them. Silence doesn't mean inaction. It means you don't waste energy on words that serve no purpose. It means you wait until speaking actually matters, until it creates impact. That's strategy, that's strength. You don't need to be the loudest in the room. You just need to be the one who moves with purpose when the time comes. Silence also earns respect. The ones who speak less often, but with more weight, are the ones others listen to. Because they know those words are chosen, measured, backed by thought, not impulse. And that kind of presence, quiet, steady, deliberate, is more powerful than any speech or performance. So when the world gets loud, stay silent. When people rush to react, stay calm. When you're provoked, don't respond, observe. Hold your ground, protect your energy, move with precision, not emotion. That's how you win, that's how you lead, that's how you last. When you talk, you leak. When you're quiet, you build. Every word you speak reveals something. Your intentions, your mindset, your weaknesses, your priorities. And if you're not careful, if you speak too soon or too often, you start giving away pieces of your strategy. You start exposing your position, you lose leverage. That's the cost of constant talking. You trade power for attention. People don't realize how much they give away with casual conversation. A simple complaint reveals your frustrations. A brag shows your insecurities. A reaction exposes your triggers. And the more you talk, the more you dilute your energy. Your words start working against you, scattering your focus, turning your mission into noise. That's why silence is not just a personality trait, it's a tactical decision. When you're quiet, you protect what you're building. You keep your ideas, your progress, and your grind guarded. You preserve your energy. You direct your focus inward, toward discipline, growth, and execution. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're not seeking approval. You're working. And that quiet work builds strength. It builds depth. It builds something that doesn't need to be explained because it will be undeniable once it's revealed. Talking is easy. Action is hard. So many people want to speak their goals into existence. They announce everything. They say, I'm going to do this, I'm working on that. But saying it doesn't make it real. In fact, sometimes it does the opposite. It satisfies the ego just enough to kill the drive. You feel like you've already done something just because you said it. But words alone are a trap if they aren't backed by relentless action. Silence, on the other hand, is commitment. It means you don't need to tell the world what you're doing. You're too busy actually doing it. You're not in the business of convincing others. You're in the business of building yourself. And every day you stay quiet, stay focused, stay consistent, you build something stronger than words, results. The people who talk the most usually produce the least, and the ones who say little, they're often the ones making the biggest moves, because they understand that building requires solitude. It requires space to think, to plan, to execute. And that space disappears the moment you start filling it with noise. So be quiet. Let your silence be your protection. Let your work be your proof. Let your results speak louder than your voice ever could. When you talk, you leak. When you're quiet, you build. And when you build long enough in silence, you won't need to say a word. Your presence will speak for you. You don't need to prove what you know, just act. The moment you feel the need to constantly prove yourself, you've already lost your power, because real power doesn't need validation. Real knowledge doesn't need applause. Real mastery doesn't need recognition. It simply moves, it simply performs, it simply delivers results without warning, without a show, without noise. The people who talk the most about what they know are often the ones who have done the least. They need to convince others they're smart, skilled, or prepared because deep down, they're not sure themselves. But those who truly know, those who have put in the time, who have tested their knowledge in the fire of experience, they don't have anything to prove. They just act calmly, confidently, relentlessly. Action is what separates the real from the fake. It's easy to talk. It's easy to list facts, share theories, or quote books. But can you lead when it counts? Can you perform under pressure? Can you stay disciplined when no one is watching? That's where knowledge becomes real, not in the discussion, but in the execution. This mindset is forged through experience. When you've spent hours, months, years grinding, learning, falling, and rising again, you stop caring about what people think of what you know. You stop wasting energy trying to impress. You start channeling all your focus into one thing: action. Because you know that no matter what you say, people will always judge you by what you do. The quiet professional is dangerous. They don't talk about what they're about to do. They just do it. They don't need to say, "I've trained for this." You'll see it in their performance. They don't need to say, "I understand the plan." You'll see it in how they execute. They don't need to convince you they're ready. They've already proven it to themselves, and that's enough. In a world full of talkers, the doer is rare. And because they're rare, they're powerful. They conserve their energy for the mission. They don't spend it chasing approval. They move in silence. They act with purpose, and their results unshakable. Unarguable, undeniable. So if you truly know something, if you've lived it, earned it, mastered it, then show it through your actions. Let your discipline speak. Let your work speak. Let your consistency speak. Every time you choose to act instead of talk, you become sharper, stronger, more respected, and eventually, the people who used to doubt you will have no choice but to recognize the truth. Not because you told them, but because you showed them. That's the standard. You don't need to prove what you know, just act, because the strongest message is delivered without a word. A real warrior never shows all his weapons. This isn't just about literal arms or tools. It's a principle that applies to mindset, strategy, and life itself. True strength lies in restraint and unpredictability. When you reveal everything at once, you lose the element of surprise. You become predictable. You give your opponent or your challenges an advantage. But when you hold back, when you keep some cards close to your chest, you maintain power. A warrior who displays every weapon up front is inviting confrontation on terms that aren't theirs to control. They expose their weaknesses as much as their strengths. They give others the chance to prepare, to counter, to dismantle their arsenal piece by piece. But the wise warrior understands that victory often depends on what remains unseen. This concept goes beyond battlefields and war zones. It applies to business, relationships, competition, and personal growth. In any arena, revealing your entire strategy too early can ruin your chances of success. It invites interference, sabotage, or premature judgment. It's like showing your entire hand in poker before the game even begins. A real warrior knows when to reveal strength and when to conceal it. They understand timing is crucial. Sometimes showing a hint of power is enough to deter adversaries. Other times, it's better to wait, to build silently, to prepare for the right moment when the impact will be decisive. Holding back is not weakness, it's wisdom and discipline. There's also humility in not needing to display everything. A warrior doesn't feel the need to prove their worth constantly. Their confidence comes from knowing they have resources, skills, and plans that aren't visible. That quiet confidence unsettles opponents, it commands respect, it makes others underestimate you at their peril. In life, people often feel pressure to reveal too much too soon. They broadcast their plans, their strengths, their feelings, hoping for validation or recognition. But oversharing can backfire. It creates vulnerability, it reduces your bargaining power, it invites criticism before you've even had a chance to succeed. The real warrior is patient, they conserve their energy. They sharpen their tools in secret. They let their actions speak louder than their words. When the moment comes, they deploy their hidden weapons with precision and impact, overwhelming others who thought they had the advantage. This approach requires discipline and trust in yourself, and in the process. It demands that you resist the urge for immediate gratification or recognition. It asks you to have faith in your preparation, in your ability to adapt, and in your timing. A real warrior understands the power of mystery. They know that what's unseen can be more powerful than what's shown, and in that silence, in that hidden strength, lies the key to lasting victory.